everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Gameable Audio. I am your host, Kristoffer Schenström, and this is episode 9, and this is actually a very special one. I have a special guest this week, and we're basically going to talk a little bit more about video game covers, and especially more about publishing and so on. And with that, we have from GameGrooves, Allen, is it Brasch in the last name?
Yeah, that's actually correct. You got it right.
Oh, damn. I was so curious because I have the SCH as well, and that's in Swedish, so Schenström. So I was a little bit, oh. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well.
It's so much fun to have you here. Actually, we've been talking a little bit back and forth about doing an episode together, and I'm just super stoked to actually have you here and talk a little bit more about another aspect of the video game music sphere, I would say. But first of all, I think it's more interesting for people to from the start here, get to know you a little bit better. Where did you start? What was your first kind of engagement getting into video game music?
So I started a little bit later than most people probably playing video games. I'll go back and then we'll flash forward pretty quickly. My first console was a Nintendo 64. So obviously Super Mario 64 soundtrack was probably the first soundtrack that I fell in love with just because I played that game so much. And then, you know, I didn't really, I guess, fall in love with video game music until I had a GameCube, and two games specifically really shaped my musical interest, and those two games were Sonic Adventure 2 and Metroid Prime. And actually, Metroid Prime inspired me to start creating electronic music and got me into wanting to create music. And then from there, I kind of stumbled my way into the cover community. I was working a job that was kind of monotonous, so video game soundtracks were a good way to combat the boredom. And then through that, I started discovering covers, and then I thought to myself, well, what if somebody put together a playlist of these covers and like organized them? And that is the prototype, so to speak, of my first project, Game Lark, which was before GameGrooves. So that's kind of a quick rundown.
How old were you in this time?
Let's see.
Timeline.
I started Game Lark when it was 2015, so I was like, I guess I was 27, 28.
And how much
like
electronic music have you worked with prior to that as well, before you started going more into Game Lark?
I've dabbled over the years. I've put out just stuff here and there, and I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like an artist or anything, but I do think my friends that have listened to the music that I make say it sounds like video game music. So I think it's safe to say video game music left a big imprint on my musical life.
That is actually pretty stoked as well. It's fun to hear about. Especially going into from that kind of aspect as well, doing some electronics and then putting basically together playlists and so on. We can kind of see the starting of the shape, I guess, already with GameLark, then what later then became GameGrooves.
Right.
So in consideration for starting, because now we're going to listen to basically music that all have been published by GameGrooves over the course of time. We're listening a little bit to the older albums that we released, and also some of the new ones, which is also going to be a little bit so people get to know the aspect and a little bit about the width of what Gameable Grooves, or GameGrooves, sorry, is capable of. So in consideration to this, then, when you were about to start with GameGrooves, did you already have a good aspect of what you wanted to do with it because of the prior experience you had with GameLark?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I did GameLark until I had my first child. I had my son. And so I just didn't have as much time to devote to it, and I stepped away, and then I really just missed it, and things kind of fell into place. And originally, GameGrooves wasn't a label. I was strictly doing video game news and features and that kind of thing on our website. But then I missed the music side of it, and so now GameGrooves is kind of a lot of things. There's the podcast, there's the website. There's something called GameGrooves Studio, which I hope to build out to be even more beneficial for for cover artists and original composers, and then of course the label GameGrooves Music, which is probably what people are most familiar with.
Yes. I think it kind of helps, especially when you actually start releasing more and more albums covering video game music covers as well. The more there is out there and the more you have in your portfolio, the more people will get to recognize. And even when they search for something like, hey, I want to hear A Link to the Past or Zelda covers, and then they will find GameGrooves in the end.
Yeah.
Maybe not today, but at some point they will have the algorithms will point them towards it.
I'm hoping.
Definitely. I hope really as well that this episode will reach out to a lot of people and people start noticing and maybe even reaching out to you, getting help with publishing their remixes and covers, basically. And I think that is the most important thing, because usually on this podcast I've talked to a lot of different composers and artists, but I never really talked to somebody running a label and trying to get artists out there. So I think this could be a really interesting take on what is out there, basically, because I do know some cover artists myself, and then they usually thought in the beginning it was hard getting out there and especially trying to get their own work out there, trying to find either a label or try to self-publish it. Considering from your perspective, what is usually the main question you get from people reaching out to you, considering that they want to release something?
Easily licensing. People wanting to know if a particular soundtrack can be licensed. And the reason is, there's I've been in the video game music scene for about 8 years now, right? And I'm still learning new things all the time about how licensing works and if there's exceptions and this and that and the other. So most of the time, if somebody reaches out to me, it's usually a licensing question, which is I'm happy to answer. And I'm always happy to answer because, like I said, I'm of the mindset that the video game music scene has, if we're talking even just strictly about covers, it's changed so much even since I've joined. There was a time when there were only a handful of people that were really doing this, like early 2000s, and then you had OC Remix, and you had all these other communities form. And then YouTube was kind of my entry point for VGM. There were a lot of cover artists that got popular on making video game covers on YouTube, and so I became friends with a lot of them and discovered a lot of new artists thanks to YouTube. But even that's kind of changed over time. So, I think it's that's the number one question. And number two is I don't know if I can't really think of it. After that, it gets kind of, there's various questions and whatnot. Sometimes people are interested in releasing through GameGrooves or whatnot, but yeah.
Okay, I see. But I think we have a more of a general aspect now. Before we're diving deeper into thought processes and so on, considering music, etc. I think it's best we dive into the first track of the week. How does that sound to you?
Oh, that's great.
That's great. Awesome. So the first track we're going to listen to, so everybody knows, they're going to be a genre selected to each and every track that we're going to listen to today. And I hope everybody out there will love this, because I absolutely adore these tracks as well. So first out this is from Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. And this is the Cookery Forest by Fuzzpixel and the album Link 182, a pop-funk tribute to Ocarina. there we had the first track of the week. It was Fuzz Pixels doing the Cookery Forest from the Link 182, a pop punk tribute to Ocarina. I really enjoyed this one. First of all, I am a little bit of a sucker to Zelda music. Not specifically Ocarina of Time. For people who know me, I have a hard time when it comes to Ocarina. I'm more towards the old 2D type of Zelda games, but I cannot deny that the soundtrack for all the Zelda games are just amazing, no matter if they're 2D or 3D. What is your take basically on Zelda, first of all?
My take on Zelda, I'm a big fan of the series. I didn't really get into Zelda until the 3D games, specifically Wind Waker.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the game, I think it was a GameStop pre-order, where you got a Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask like preview disc, like full games to get ready for Wind Waker.
Was that the Master Quest as well?
I think so, yeah. So there was like 3 games on one GameCube disc to help, I guess, get people excited for Wind Waker, and that was how I played Ocarina of Time. And then, of course, Wind Waker, and I loved Wind Waker, and I loved Ocarina of Time, but Wind Waker especially, the music, the exploration, it just really resonated with me. And since then, all of the Zelda games, I feel like, I don't really necessarily feel like they're games I go back and play again and again, but they're like unique experiences that like stay with you, right? And this, especially the music. So,
definitely,
this album
there's a lot
was
of time
kind of
going into it. So,
yeah. And this album, Link 182, was kind of half of a joke. I was posting online about what if somebody did a pop punk tribute to Zelda, and my good friend Ro Panaganti was like, Link 182, and once I saw that name, I was like, oh my god, I have to do this. So I like to do a couple different things for albums. Sometimes we'll pick a specific genre in a specific game, and we'll try and do some kind of clever combination there. So we have Zelda, which most people are familiar with.
Yes.
And then pop punk, which is a genre that was really popular when I was a teenager, and that tells you how old I am. And then it just kind of fit.
It really does.
Another example would be something like Mario Kart, where we took Mario Kart and ska, and again, these two, like, you wouldn't necessarily think of ska when you think of Mario Kart, but when you hear the two blended together, it just makes sense. So
yeah, definitely. We're going to hear a track soon as well from the Mario Kart album. So I kind of want to return a little bit again to the Zelda part here. So considering the albums that you have released on Bandcamp, this is the the 5th album. So you said you got the vibe of like, hey, what if we made Link as a pop punk? It feels so weird considering what you had before. It feels like you had the jazz from Persona. Persona and jazz kind of felt good together. The Battle Royale album, the Star Fox 64, an electronic tribute, feels kind of, it fits the genre itself. And then you have the Archstones and a metal tribute to Demon's Souls, which also feels very metal. But then you come to the first twist of everything when you get to the Ocarina of Time, a pop punk album all of a sudden. So it feels like this was the first real twist of an album that I felt. Is this what you felt as well, like you wanted to achieve or do?
Yes, I think that's a very accurate observation on your part, where, the first couple of albums, from the beginning, I knew I wanted GameGrooves to have a variety of sounds. And actually, this is like deep lore, but I have like 6 elements that I created to represent like each genre of music. So I kind of try to cycle through those more or less, make sure that every genre on those elements gets some attention. So you mentioned the Persona album, which was jazz, and we had electronic music, and then we had metal, and then with this one, you're right, there was a bit of a twist there where I wanted to go for arrangements that wouldn't necessarily be obvious. You see a lot of Zelda and metal,
Yes.
Zelda metal covers, and Zelda and like folk and Zelda and orchestral. But I wanted something that felt a little bit fresh, and I think that's what got me excited about the idea to begin with, is that it was a little bit out of left field.
And
So,
this is something
yes,
we will
you're
see
right.
more of as well, considering the rest of the albums that kind of came afterwards. We're starting to see more kind of this mishmash of genres happening from game and what you expect from a game versus the mash you're doing together with the genre of the music. For example, when I'm listening to Ocarina of Time or basically any Zelda game, you have this more like folklore, easygoing kind of music. And usually people go to the extreme and doing like a metal version of it, and it fits very good. Now we're doing pop punk. It still fits very good, but I would not expect it when if you said this to me, it's like, hey Chris, we're doing a pop punk version of Zelda. I would be intrigued, but I would say like, I don't think it will work.
Yeah.
But I've been proven wrong.
That's the challenge, right?
Yes. So considering this as well, and as I said, we will see this moving onwards with albums as well. It kind of becomes, I would say, like a unique selling point from your point of view as GameGrooves evolves, having these twists in the discography. Is this something you kind of want to continue, or is it just because you have your own interest in these kind of mashups or in these type of genres of music?
Well, I like to have a variety of sounds and soundtracks, right? So I don't think I would ever want to do all one type of thing. So I wouldn't be interested in only making albums that had some kind of twist. Because I think there's a place for everything. Obviously, we have, GameGrooves, the roster of artists we have over 150 artists that are receiving emails when we announce an album, right? So sometimes I like to have albums where there are a lot of different genres on one album. But in the case of something like Blink-182, obviously I want a more curated sound, a more cohesive sound.
Of course.
So I think it's fun to do a little bit of everything, to have some albums that are, let's say, a little bit more expected, like a Castlevania metal album. That's not a stretch, but it's, with that album, we wanted to do something a little different. I'll get to that later. So yeah, to answer your question, I think variety is the spice of life. So same thing with GameGrooves. We're going to constantly look for exciting ideas, whether it's doing something that seems out of left field or trying to take the production level up a notch, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Considering this as well, so a little bit prior, I would say like almost 2 hours prior to us recording this, you also sent out a question to your community, asking if people have any burning questions. And I saw one answering with this tweet, basically. So this was from Matthew Podcast Network with the tag WWE Master 2018. He wanted us to do some sort of name association to give us our opinion on either the soundtracks or share stories or thoughts about the games. And he wrote 16 total, so we will basically throughout this episode go through this a little bit as well as we move along. Okay. So the first, I have 3 that we're going to just go through. And the first one is Jet Set Radio. Do you have any sort of experience with this game?
No, but I want to play it. I've heard so much about the soundtrack.
Definitely.
I think I saw a leak of that they're remaking it. And I know that I've heard a little bit of the soundtrack. I know that I had a good friend that was obsessed with the game. So if and when that remake comes out, I'm definitely going to be getting it.
And kind of the same for me. I heard a lot about this game. I haven't been able to get a chance to play this one, but I've seen videos and so on of the game. To me, just checking it out, I don't think it will per se be something for me, but I would love to just try it out to see what the fuss was all about, basically.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting for me. The next one is Killer Instinct. And this is one I have a lot of memories, especially the old ones, but also the new ones. So what about you?
I think I've played a little bit of some of the originals. If we're thinking word association, then Game Lark did an album, I guess in 2016 called Versus. And my friend Rob Ponagazzi, I mentioned him before, he did a cover of Jago's theme that is still one of my favorite VGM covers. So if you haven't heard it before, go check it out. It's really, really good. He did I forget what the character, where Jago's from originally, like as far as the game lore goes, but Ro did kind of like a specific twist on it that was really, really special.
Okay.
And again, still one of my favorite tracks.
I think if we were able to get a link to that somehow, then we can definitely add it into the main post of this podcast episode, so people easily can find it, or maybe we'll share it on the community so people easily can find it.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
I can get it for you.
definitely. But for me, I actually play this game a lot. I actually own this cartridge still for my original Super Nintendo, and I played the hell out of this game. I loved it so much. But I never owned the CD. I own it today though, but when I was younger, I never really owned the CD, and I would have loved to own that shit. Because in Sweden, I don't know if it was worldwide, that kind of thing, that they actually added the CD together with the box when they sold it. Do you know if they did that in the US too?
I don't know. I know the CD existed separate from the game, which is unusual, especially for back then, but it's obviously much appreciated for licensing purposes.
No, but the name of it was also so much fun. You have the game Killer Instinct. The cartridge was black out of everything. It was so cool. It was so unique. No other cartridge had any color, or all gray and boring. But then you had the CD, and it was called the Killer Cuts. It's just so good. And the music in Killer Instinct, it really comes with a lot of attitude. So for me, trying to hear either remixes or trying to do reference to the old tracks. For example, the new Killer Instinct, when they remade it for the Xbox One, they actually did go in and remade some of the songs as well. And it was just mind-boggling and mind-blowing at the same time to me. Because for some reason I was thinking like, oh, this isn't that good. But then given it just a couple of listens, it just becomes better and better. But also, it is a great fighting game. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He did, and he did this special type. One of my favorite characters is Black Orchid. I know a lot of people don't like that character, but for some reason, I just adore that character. But the song they have for her is so freaking amazing. I just love it, and they even have vocals for it as well. Whew, so good, so good. But it's always so weird when it comes to video game music and you hear vocals. It is becoming more common today to have vocals inside your tracks. But listening to old tracks having vocals or have some implication to have vocals, it felt so weird. It's like, how much memory did it put into this? Just to have it in the game.
I mean that was probably why there was a huge limitation on what they could fit in a cartridge or even a CD. Well, I guess it wasn't until CDs you really started hearing more vocals.
Yeah, definitely. So, considering Killer Instinct, we move on to something more friendly, and also this is a Swedish contribution, Minecraft.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So what about that one? You have a lot of experience. I mean, since you have kids, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it's funny because I go through periods. I haven't really played Minecraft in a long time. A lot, I guess. There's been a couple times where I like helped a friend run a server, but I feel like it's chicken soup for the gamer's soul. Like, there's definitely been times where I'm like, I don't have the energy or the mindset to play through like games that are like Demon Souls or something like that. And Minecraft's just there to be like, hey, do you want to lose 10 hours of your life and make some little stuff that you enjoy and hear some like really calm, gentle music? And obviously, like, the OST is very. It doesn't have a big OST, but the songs that are included in the original soundtrack are really, really famous for a reason. So I have a lot of fond memories of Minecraft. And yes, my son, I don't know. I got him. I guess that's technically his first video game. I bought him Minecraft. He doesn't really play it. He helps me play it on my Switch. Okay. But he's obsessed with all the monsters. You know, that's what he's like. Is the most cool to him. You know, it's always about like escaping the monsters. But no, it's fun because, like I said, I feel like I'm definitely getting to the point with both my kids that they're starting to show a little bit of interest in games and game music, and you know, I've played some stuff for them. But no, Minecraft is just one of those games I think that it's always fun. You know, and especially if you haven't played it in a while, you come back and you're like, holy crap, they've added so much stuff, and just the modding community and what people can do with it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like a game to end all games. Like you could literally just play Minecraft for the rest of your life and never run out of things to do.
Yeah, exactly. It is very inspirational, and you can almost do anything you want to. It is crazy.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to create anything specific for something, for example, like you don't want to be super smart and do like a machinery that does this and that, then fuck it. You just go creative, and then you do pixel art instead.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so satisfying as well. It is super fun and super interesting to see all these crazy things people do in Minecraft. It is insane. But one thing I need to ask when it comes to Minecraft, do you have anything, so when you're starting out Minecraft, do you have anything like, I need to create this before I move on with anything else?
If we're talking creative mode or survival mode, which one?
I'm talking generally. So if you play a lot of survival mode, then go with the survival mode.
Sure. I mean, I learned a lot. From playing recently. You got to find coal right away, because otherwise I built this enormous cave for my son. I'm like, we'll be safe down here. We have doors, and then I forgot that everything spawns if you don't have light up. So that's the first thing. It's find some light sources if you're playing survival. Creative mode, I tend to just like to build like big things. Like I remember I was working on like my version of Olympus, and it was enormous, and I just eventually like kind of like it got so big I didn't know where to go with it. But I do love creative mode, because that's where you just get to it's like Legos, but you know, virtual, so you can literally make anything you want.
I couldn't have said it better. For me, it's definitely just building a house, to be honest. I just find it fun to chop down some trees and just have my simple house, and then somebody else comes up with like a laser rifle because they know everything about Minecraft, and I'm just enjoying the small things I could.
Yeah.
So it's always so insane. But yet again, as you said, it is a great game. It is great for being creative and just getting those creative juices flowing, in my opinion. And it works really good for younger audiences as well. So with this, I think it's time we head into the next song. I would love to hear the next one, because I'm just super eager for this one as well. Well, I'm super eager for everything, so... So yeah, with the next one, this is the Flying Raccoon Suit, and I guess people can already tell this is going to be a Mario track of some sort. This is basically the 3 raceways and Wario Stadium from the album Scario Kart, a ska tribute to Mario 64. we're fading out. The Three Ways in Wario Stadium by the Flying Raccoon Suit from the album Scario Kart, a ska tribute to Mario Kart 64. I really enjoy this one. Holy crap. It really comes with this ska vibe. You have the attitude, and I just love the saxophone going wild in this.
This album's interesting for a couple of reasons. You know, once again, we're doing that left field twist a little bit where you don't necessarily think ska with Mario Kart music. But this, I don't even remember where I came up with the idea. But I was familiar with this artist, Jer. They're also, they have a couple different musical projects. Jer is the straight ska artist, and Ska Tune Network is the one that's probably more familiar to the VGM folks. And so I was watching one of their videos, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a whole album of ska covers? And then if somehow Mario Kart came to mind, and I actually reached out to them and said, hey, I'm interested in putting together an album with some ska artists. I'm not that familiar with the community, but maybe you could help. And so their manager reached out to me and said, sure, this sounds exciting. We'll reach out and see who's interested. And we got about 7 or 8 artists, I think, that responded that I didn't know. And I don't think most of them knew of GameGrooves beforehand. But then we started putting it together, and I filled in, the other half of the album with artists from the VGM community. So it's kind of half artists that are primarily ska artists, and then half artists that are primarily VGM. And I think that mix, that blend is fun because, it's just a really fun album. It's probably one of my favorites, and it's definitely our best-selling album to date.
Yeah, I would say for me, I was mostly interested in this one for the main reason that when I'm thinking about Mario Kart, I'm thinking about fun as like a primary word, and having ska added to the Mario Kart soundtrack is very playful. Playful can also become fun. So I think it is like a really good fit for it, like the hand in the glove, like we say in Sweden. it is just a really good fit. So I think this was just a really good like thought of mind process, putting ska genre on the Mario Kart music. But as you said, having half and half with people doing VGM and people doing ska, would you say you can hear a little bit of a difference? Of course, everything is ska as a genre, but I guess you can get a sense that, okay, this is more a VGM version of ska, while this is actual kind of music ska by the book. Is that a difference we can hear in the album, or is it just me being crazy?
Yeah, I have to think of the right terms, because so essentially the bands that are playing ska, some of these are bands that tour, and they're much more versed in like ska, let's say, culture. Yeah, ska culture and ska, like, just in general. Whereas the VGM folks, I think VGM folks, a lot of them tend to just be versatile. Like we have a couple artists that are on this album that can do metal or rock or this or that. So they're familiar enough with all these genres to create arrangements that still fit within those genres. But I think they're a little bit more willing to go outside those genre boundaries. So it's kind of fun. So if you want the more traditional ska, you have it. But if you want stuff that it touches on the ska genre and then kind of goes in other places, you also have that. I am not a genre stickler. Surprisingly, because I'm a huge metal fan, and I used to fight people over definitions of, black metal versus death metal or whatever. But now I'm much more of a, genres are just a way of kind of, they're marketing, essentially. That's what they are. It's just marketing terms. Like ways of explaining to people what to expect before they hear music. If I tell you a song is metal, you're going to have certain expectations before you listen to it.
Yes.
And so with ska, I think as long as it falls within what I consider the ska umbrella, it fits on the album. So yeah, I think the VGM folks definitely have a little bit of a different take from the ska bands, and I think they both benefit from being on the same album.
I believe
and
so
honestly,
as well.
one other thing I want to say is that I have discovered from this album that the ska community is very similar to VGM in the sense that they're very pro independent artists. They support each other a lot. They have a lot of fun. They don't take themselves too seriously. And I think they have a little bit of a stigma to fight. You know, a lot of people think of ska as being like dead or kind of like an outdated genre, but it's not. I mean, there's more ska now than ever, I feel like. And just like VGM, some people feel like covers have had their heyday. I don't think that's the case at all. And there's still that, you know, stigma that video game music isn't real music that some people subscribe to. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm still fighting this as well.
I feel like they both kind of exist despite, you know, general music snobbery, I guess.
Yeah, could be. No, I definitely meet this from time to time. Even my parents have always had this stigma of video game music is not music, but a lot of the original music that you could hear on a Nintendo 8-bit and so on were actually traditional composers in the beginning that actually worked with traditional music. It's just this is how it sounds due to the fact of the sound shifts and so on. And today, when we're talking about video game music, I mean, if we're starting up the Elden Ring series and so on, the music there sounds like it could be from Lord of the Rings. There's literally no difference to it today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, nowadays you have you have film and TV composers composing for video games.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a separate topic and separate discussion all on its own, whether video game music, like, what does that mean now? It used to mean, you know, music that is arranged to fit within a certain style because you had technical limitations of the cartridge or whatever, you know, ROM or CD. And now it can mean anything. It can mean chiptune. It can mean rock. It can mean metal. It can mean jazz. It can mean so many different things. I mean, that's why there's this debate. I wouldn't call it debate, but there's this tongue-in-cheek thing called, you know, VGM is not a genre, which is actually the name of an album we just put out.
Yes.
Which was us us riffing on the Periphery album. Gent is not a genre, but video game music is again, I don't know. Is it a genre? Is it a medium? I really can't say. And even in sense of, you say video game music community. Well, does that mean original composers, cover artists, nerdcore, you know, audio design? There's so many things that go into making video game music special and what it is. And I think they're all integral. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they all revolve around video games and how video games have impacted popular culture, both music and film and everything else. So, yeah.
And considering music from the industry of movies and, well, basically series and movies, considering video game music per se, I do believe today, with everything happening in vinyl, CDs, and orchestras and so on, I even think video game music is starting to kind of take over what is a classical. Like, if you go to a Hans Zimmer concert to listen to the music Hans Zimmer wrote for different movies, etc., I think you could go to 3 or 4 video game music composition. So it's so crazy how everything has basically exploded. In Sweden, we have an older kind of orchestra or event called Joystick, where we basically took a couple of video game music tracks and we just put them through an orchestra. And from my experience when I visited these, it is not just young people going to these, because older people have the interest of just going to an orchestra. If they're listening to the orchestra playing the video game music, they will say, "Oh, this is nice." But then if we play the original track, they will like, "Oh my god!"
Right. Yeah, I definitely
so
think
crazy.
Video game music has reached the mainstream for sure, and it's hopefully going to continue to. Especially, this year they add a special category for video game music in the Grammys. So that's something that 20 years ago you would never think would happen. And you're right, that touches on something else I don't know a ton about, but I've read a couple articles that a lot of concert halls or orchestras are turning to video game music because gamers aren't going anywhere. You have people that started out and on Atari and MS-DOS and those early systems that are in their 50s and 40s and 50s, and then people like myself in the 30s where we'll go to these concerts because we connected with the music. And so you have people that just go for the experience of going to a concert perhaps, and maybe they aren't familiar with the source material. But then you have people like myself who do know the source material and they do like to hear new interpretations of it. And I mean, isn't that the same thing as classical music though? I mean, how many times have we heard arrangements or adaptations of Vivaldi or Beethoven or any of these other, really iconic composers? There's a reason that the music continues to be like remixed and I wouldn't say reinvented, but reinterpreted. That's a good way of putting it. Reinterpreted.
So, well, basically, I can only agree with you on this part. I mean, it is a very interesting train of thought on this part. So, but I don't have anything else kind of to add to that. So I think let's go into some more soundtrack name associations here. So since this was a Mario Kart album, of course we're gonna start out with the original Super Mario Brothers. I know you said that you started out with the N64, but do you have any other earlier experience together with Mario?
Yes, I do. I mean, I've played Super Mario Brothers here and there. I remember one of my earliest gaming memories is I had a babysitter that had she had a Super Nintendo, so she had Super Mario World, and I was just a young child trying to get past the first level, and I never did when I was like 5 or 6. But yeah, at that time it was like something special. It's like, oh my goodness, this is something I've never seen before. But like I said, it wasn't really until the Nintendo 64, that Super Mario 64, that my love for gaming kicked off. Yeah, and I think that I came in at a very exciting time when 3D gaming was like just getting started. So it was like a whole new. There was a lot of focus on exploration, which is something I really resonate with still to this day. Platformers and action games. But no, I mean, the music of Super Mario is some of the most iconic for a reason, and Definitely. Super Mario Brothers, it still holds up. I mean, it's incredible what they were able to do with the limitations that they had. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say I think I don't know. I mean, Super Mario World is probably like the earliest memories I have of Mario music.
Yes. Okay. No, I love the Super Mario World. Super Nintendo is one of my favorite consoles, but I did start out with the original 8-bit, and the Super Mario Brothers, together with Ghouls and Ghosts, was my first cartridges that I had, and I did go and rent a couple of other games, but overall I was not super fond of the Nintendo 8-bit. But for me, when it comes to Super Mario Brothers, I actually talked about Super Mario Brothers not so long ago when I had the episode The Generational Superstars, because when it comes to Super Mario Brothers, I think they kind of put down a great foundation of how music could sound and be very happy and yet have a lot of emotions through gameplay and the music altogether. And usually when people think about Mario games and so on, and especially Mario music, if you're just thinking back about the first Super Mario Brothers game, now you played Super Mario World, so it might not be resonating at the same level, but do you remember if you played the original 8-bit Super Mario Brothers game? Which song, do you have any that you remember a little bit of?
Oh, I mean, of course, the stage 1-1, I mean... Did like that's some of the, aside from like maybe Megalovania, some of the like most recognizable notes you'll hear in music history. And I love that the Super Mario Brothers movie paid tribute to so many of those tracks from all different games in the Mario history. Yeah, I mean, like you said, they were able to create mood, and even think about if we're thinking about the first Super Mario Brothers, think about the fact that they created maybe they didn't create the convention, but they definitely popularized the convention of having the music speed up when time was running out, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's something else that's unique to game music, where you wouldn't necessarily have that if it was a pop song or something else. That was specifically suited for gameplay. So
Definitely.
yeah, I'd say that and the Underground for sure. Those two
Yes.
tracks are probably the ones that stick out to me the most.
Yeah, and for me, since I could only choose one, I couldn't play the full soundtrack because, well, theoretically it would fit, but it was not the point I was trying to make. So I would say when it comes to a generational superstar and what kind of made a lot of sense that people know about Super Mario, if they play the series and are well aware of it, everybody knows about the Underground theme.
Yes.
Because the first track itself, this is something you can have similarities to in other tracks to come with the Mario Bros. Series. This is something that kind of, they worked into your brain. You will kind of connect and resonate, and you know, okay, I'm playing a Mario game, because you have that kind of vibe to it. But the Underground theme is so different to the soundtrack, and it kind of brings another edge to the soundtrack itself. And this is why I think it has such a great impression on the generation to come. And that's why I thought from the Super Mario Brothers that the Underground theme was such a good one.
Yeah, I would agree.
And the next one, Donkey Kong Country. And I kind of place this one specifically here because when it comes to Donkey Kong Country series, I always thought that Donkey Kong Country would really fit well as a ska version as well. It's either that or Yas.
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, that's definitely the Donkey Kong Country series is definitely on my list of albums to visit someday. David Wise did a phenomenal job creating that soundtrack, and I think once,
Definitely did.
I think a lot of times when you talk about David Wise and you talk about rare composers, Rare as in the company Rare, you have Grant Kirkhope and David Wise, and so I think Grant Kirkhope was probably more well known for like melodies, like with Banjo-Kazooie, but David Wise was able to create these this ambient sound that just nobody else could touch at that time. Something like Aquatic Ambience or Circubush Symphony. I mean, these are like gaming VGM icons. Like if you created like a Rolling Stones list, but for video game music, that would have to be on there. We had an Aquatic Ambience track on our I guess our latest album that came out April 1st. That was done by Ropon Agati as well. But either way, I guess I would say I never owned a Super Nintendo, but I did play through Donkey Kong Country at a friend's house. And so we played for a couple weeks and I got pretty familiar with the soundtrack, but obviously I'm more familiar now with all the Donkey Kong Country soundtracks through covers. There's definitely been a couple soundtracks where, no, it's true, where I have an emotional attachment to music just because of the cover. And yeah, I'll listen to the original, but it's funny. Like I've gotten into I have bought video games after falling in love with the music, the soundtrack first. So
I can definitely agree to that.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Country there will be a Donkey Kong Country GameGrooves album at some point in the future. I just have to think of what it's going to be. I think that needs its own twist.
If you could choose the genre yourself, it's like, hey, if you say I want to do this genre, and you will get the artist just lining up for you, what would you like to do with Donkey Kong Country? What genre would you be interested in doing today? Of course, it might change in the future, but.
I mean, jazz is a good suggestion, although I think that's been done before. Actually, there is a Donkey Kong ska album, I think, that came out. I'm not remembering the name of it, but there is one that has come out. I don't know. I think jazz probably, or something along those lines.
I actually got a good
Yeah.
question here now that you said. Considering when you're planning an album or something like that, do you ever do any like marketing research and so on? It's like, oh, do they have an album of this or something already, etc.?
That's a good question. So do I do any research before we work on an album? I mean, I try to see how people respond to albums, or games. I guess this is kind of like a exclusive tease for your podcast listeners, but I'll give you an example. There's a game that came out recently that has taken the cover community by storm, and I had no idea what this game was or why people were so interested in it. But then I started checking out covers and soundtracks, and I said, well, clearly people enjoy it, so let's throw together an album. And we've started working on it, and it's going to be coming out, I guess, in May.
Awesome.
So that's an example of me looking at the community and seeing what the community is interested in. Whereas there's other games where they have really great soundtracks, but that just doesn't take in the community for one reason or the other. And so, sure. I mean, you have albums like Link 182. That's a safe bet. There's entire Zelda communities that are dedicated to that. But then there are some albums that are just more passion projects, and it's me just saying, yeah, I'm going to throw a bunch of money at this, and I don't really care if it...
It's like Chips Challenge. Let's go.
Yeah, Chips Challenge. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe you mentioned that. But yeah, I mean, I've tried to it's funny because video game music and especially GameGrooves exists in this weird space between hobby/fandom and professional, right? Where GameGrooves is an LLC that I created a couple of years ago. I'm trying to make this, to use a marketing term, I guess, a profitable venture just so that I can continue to do it. But by the same token, I don't like to make decisions on what we do next based purely off what I think is going to sell.
Exactly.
And what I'm learning is that marketing isn't so much about tailoring your product to the market. It's more about learning how to target your audience, like how to find the people that will listen to the music that you've already made, right? And so I've just recently started getting into music marketing. It's not something I've really worried about before, but this year I really want to try and do it justice. And, everything from like Spotify pre-saves to learning what the algorithm's like to thinking of creative ways of marketing, or just having to change with all the different algorithms, and everything from links are now marked as spam on Twitter, so you try to use more videos or photos to market something. It's this constant, it's a constantly evolving thing. And it's fun because the alternative is just to be like, you put something out there and just say, well, if people like it, they like it, versus I'm gonna find the people that like this because I know they're out there. And that's kind of my mindset now is I will find you. I'm going to start knocking on doors saying, have you heard Scario Kart?
Our Lord and Masters of VGM covers.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true. And it's hard because trust me, I've had times where, and you could say, well, then this is, again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but with marketing, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can build a community up like I have with GameGrooves, with people that are interested in video game music. You can hire people through PR firms to send out, press copies. People. Yeah, exactly. And nothing is guaranteed, I guess. So you have to be prepared for anything, even disappointment. But I mean, there's no album that we've put out that I'm disappointed in because I enjoy the music of everything we've done. And sometimes, I'll tell you what, sometimes albums don't take off. They take years before people start noticing, and then all of a sudden, people find them. So, yeah, there's no such thing as a failure when it comes to that.
Yeah, but I could definitely just kind of sum it up so people really understand. For example, when it comes to products and so on, theoretically, everything is going to not go that well, especially if you're new into any type of genre. But as long as you can find the right person at the right point in time, anything, literally anything, can take off.
Yep.
But just trying to find that one, and it's literally impossible to try and find that specific thing that will really shoot something off. So over time, everything will actually go better and better as more people start noticing. So it is just better to keep releasing something instead of thinking, oh, I did something bad because it did not sell, because that is literally not what is happening. It's just people haven't noticed it yet. So what you can do instead is either keep releasing what you're doing, or you can just keep doing better things that you theoretically like and think is better than what you priorly did.
Yeah.
So those are some kind of wise words.
I don't know how wise, but they're words from my end. Your words are wise. My words are just words.
No, but I think they still come with a lot of experience behind them. I mean, you have been releasing multiple albums already, so they come from experience, I would say, those words. And when something comes from experience, I would say they're wise, no matter what, because no matter what people say, there's always something to take from it, and I think that's important. But with that said, I think it is time to change the pace a little bit from ska and going back to some jazz. Or not going back, going to jazz. So this time we're going to Pokemon. This is the Mauville Melodies, a jazz tribute to Pokemon. So that was the album. And this is Cade Kalka. Am I saying that right? Cade Kalka?
Yeah, Cade Kalka.
Yeah. And this is the track Hideout. Hideout from Cade Kalka from the album Mauville Melodies, a jazz tribute to Pokemon. I think there was some, or is it just that, the tribute to Pokemon? I think it was some other name, or was it? Oh, yeah, it's Pokemon
jazz.
RSE.
Yes,
That's
Ruby, Sapphire,
Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Yeah. Woohoo! Got my Pokemon lore down. Boom. No, I really enjoyed this one. So this was actually one of the tracks that I picked for this episode. And the reason why I kind of picked this one, first of all, we're listening to a jazz tribute album here for Pokemon. And some of these I recalled, and some of these tracks I did not. I'm not a well-versed person when it comes to the Pokemon games. I played for the DS and the 3DS. I played a little bit of Red and Blue. And then I really adore playing Pokemon Go on my phone. But for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, I actually haven't played much at all. I know about them. I know a little bit about the different Pokemons inside of that generation. But when it comes to the music, I am not well versed with it. But as I said, some of them I did recall and some I didn't. This was actually one of those tracks I did not recall. And considering a jazz type of album, I basically went with, hey, the Hideout track really had the best kind of jazz vibes for me. And considering the full track, of course, all tracks are jazz inspired or are generally about the jazz genre, but for me, this one had the best vibe considering what jazz is to me. What is your relation to jazz?
You remember the Bee movie? Where you ask, you like jazz? No.
Yeah.
I what's my relationship to jazz? I enjoy jazz. I wouldn't say it's my favorite genre just because I think for me it's, my primary genre growing up was metal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gotten to listen to a lot more jazz as I've gotten older, and then your taste change. So you get to a point where you're like, I can't listen to angry music like 24/7. I need some other stuff. And a lot of the people in the video game music community come from the jazz community. And I think just like ska, jazz is another one of those like little misunderstood, but really, really talented communities where you have these artists that are just phenomenal arranging and improvising. So I've grown to love jazz, I think, over the past couple years for sure.
Yeah.
And jazz is another one of those things like metal where it's like, it's like all genres. I mean, when you say jazz, people probably think of, 40s and 50s music, but there's so much more to it. Jazz fusion has really popped off in the past couple of years. So, when I discovered bands like Nowhere, and I'm going to use three bands that all have the same person, Nowhere, Louis Cole, and Clowncore, which Clowncore kind of does jazz and metal, and it's the most unhinged stuff. You realize like, oh wow, there's a jazz genre out there for me. And Hideout, you're right. Hideout has a good blend of jazz and other genres, I think. Obviously rock or funk or whatever you want to call it.
And it has this funkiness to it. It's like, this kind of would be, I guess, a jazz fusions kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah. I think so.
So for me, when I'm thinking about the genre of jazz, first of all, my experience, I'm not super like into jazz itself, but all my experience when I'm thinking about jazz, if I'm thinking about it from a stereotypical point of view, then I'm thinking about a small little bar with a lot of smoke in it, and someone is just doing like a lo-fi jazz tune, just being almost like a funk, but it's still vibey to some extent. But then we have this more like, oh, this is what you usually could see when somebody does jazz. It's really poppy. It really feels vibing. You have these saxophones, and it's just really, really nice. And for me, like combining all the information and all the experience I have from jazz, I would say from a technical perspective, a jazz player is just really freaking good.
Yeah.
It is insane. I'm not meaning that I'm selling short of everybody else. Everybody else puts in a lot of time to whatever they're playing, pop or if they're doing rock and so on. But from a technical perspective, a jazz artist is just really freaking good.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, again, I'm going to use metal a lot as examples or comparisons. That's where I come from. But it just like jazz and metal both require technical proficiency that are probably a little bit more intense than other genres. There's nothing, that isn't to say that it's better or worse. There's no quality when it comes to music, in my opinion. It all boils down to whether or not it resonates. But if you're a jazz musician and you don't have those technical proficiency, just like metal, and you can't keep up with other players that do have it, like, then it shows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, that's why I think that I think jazz to me is like it's playful, it doesn't take itself too seriously most of the time. And that's why I enjoy it. And with Pokemon, I mean, with this album specifically, there's so many choices for Pokemon music, right? It was
definitely.
I think I even just did a poll online of what generation should we do, and then from there we jazz. And there are a lot of GameGrooves artists that are humongous Pokemon fans, so they were like, please can we do Gen 3? So that's kind of how the album fell into place. But
yeah. But when
Yeah.
it comes down, when you're doing like an album, are you usually the ones like, hey, I would like these tracks in this album, or is it more like the artist comes along, it's like, hey, I would like to join in on the jazz tribute album, and I could do this song. How does usually the process work there?
That's a good question. Most of the time, this is the way it goes. I announce a project and say I'm looking for tracks from this album or from this game. If there's a specific genre I'm looking for, like metal or ska or jazz, I will say that. If it's multi-genre, I'll say multi-genre. And then people sign up. There have been a few cases, I guess only one or two, where we are looking for specific tracks and there's a reason for it. I can't get into it because it's an album that's in production now.
Yes,
We have
yes.
like 4 or 5 and I can't even remember how many. But most of the time I try to keep it pretty open so that people can go with whatever they're feeling inspired by. Yeah, so I mean in the case of Scario Kart, we covered almost every track on that album because the rest of the songs were, jingles and whatnot. But with this album, I just said, it has to be from Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And that was what we got. And again, I like to give artists as much freedom as possible because I feel like that's when they do their best work.
I can agree with that. Considering also when people are reaching out, if you get a lot of people who want to contribute to this, are you thinking about, hey, let's make a big album, or are you usually just selecting a few?
Most of the time, I think our typical cutoff is 15 tracks, right? So I'll say once we have 15 tracks, submissions are closed. Sometimes somebody won't be able to make it on the album, but they understand like over 15 is just a lot for licensing reasons and for.
Okay.
I like to create albums. That's something I'm very particular about. I want albums that are single listening experiences. And I know that, some of the bigger community albums from like OC Remix or other communities are much longer. But my perspective is if I'm selling this as a product, on Bandcamp or whatever, I want it to be, a complete package. And I want people to be able to listen to it in one sitting and enjoy it.
And I guess you kind of want it affordable too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have more tracks, it would mean more cost as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm pushing it at 15 tracks to recoup the cost. If we're talking 30 or 40 or 50 tracks, forget it. There's no way to recoup. If you're on Bandcamp, you're going to be losing money with every sale. Just because of the licensing costs. So I feel like that's a sweet spot for me. 10 to 15 tracks for a full-length album, around 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes a little longer depending on what it is.
Have you ever thought about doing smaller albums like EPs and etc.?
We've done a couple. We did a Celeste EP. We did at the beginning. I was doing EPs just because I didn't have as many artists, so I didn't have it wasn't as easy to just send out an email and get responses. I was kind of gathering artists, if you will, in the beginning. And now I'm happy to say that I'm at a point where I know that most any album I propose, there's going to be enough people interested.
Oh, that's good. So you don't need to do the headhunting part anymore, at least.
No, not anymore. It's nice, but at the same time, then the trick becomes making sure that people feel like they can participate. So for charity albums, those can go longer because I don't sell those on Bandcamp yet. I may someday. And yeah, those are a little different. But for these albums, I try to keep it around 15 or less.
For this as well, we have a couple of more of these association games and titles. So let's actually dig into the first one, and I would say world-wise, the Pokemon and this game have some similarities, and the game is Undertale.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know about the Undertale, first of all?
Oh, I know about the Undertale.
Never heard about it, right?
Oh yeah, what's this game? Again, I can give you another podcast exclusive. We are working on the Undertale album. I won't say when it's coming out. But it is a charity album. Undertale is definitely one of those games where I heard the music before I played the game. Because I remember when, I think it was Rashadi B put out a Megalovania cover and the internet exploded. And then there was literally like 2 or 3 years where I on my YouTube subscription feed, half of the covers were Undertale covers.
Yes, I think when it comes to covered albums, that is not like AAA titles like Mario and Zelda and so on. Undertale is definitely up there. Holy crap!
And I'm of the mindset that it deserves the acclaim. I know a lot of people thought it was overrated or it was too covered, but I'm like, it's resonating with the cover community for a reason. And I think it's because they're kind of like simple arrangements. You know what I mean? Like there aren't that many parts. It's not like something orchestral where you have to go through a whole process to pull out the melodies and whatnot. Like the melodies are at the forefront for Undertale. So I love the soundtrack, and I have been waiting for the right time and the right reason to do a cover album, and now we've got it.
That is awesome.
I will say more about it later, but it'll be coming out soon in the summer.
Awesome. I'm definitely looking forward to it, because when it comes to Undertale music, I'm just a sucker to it. There is so many good ones, and I think it will be a blast to hear yet another one. I'm super stoked.
One of my most viewed and my favorite covers that I've made, Allen, which just, I don't know if anyone cares, but I keep my music separate from GameGrooves, so anything I release is never through GameGrooves. It's just my own whatever thing.
Mm-hmm. You give a platform for everybody else, not just yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a full-time thing, just helping other people get their music out there. I did an orchestral version of the Temmie theme, and that was a lot of fun. And I made a video of it and everything, and that was one of my favorite covers that I made. It was goofy, but it was fun.
The Thames theme is pretty goofy. I never heard it while I was playing the game, but I think it was Benjamin Briggs that did a remix of it, and I just adored the Thames theme. It is quirky, it is fun. But I mean, for me, I think the Spider Dance is the song that makes it for me with Undertale.
Yeah.
Such a good battle, but also the tune is so good. And there's this, I think his name is Shadro. He did actually a vocal version of that song as well, which I also love and adore.
Okay. If I had to pick a track, I'd say Ruins. That was when I think that's like one of the first, like that's when you fall down and you're going around and it's like the tutorial area.
Okay. That one.
Yeah, that was when that was when I first, obviously I'd heard other covers, but that was when I was like, damn, okay, this is a good soundtrack. Like this is so that was when I knew that the soundtrack would be special, and of course it just continued to be great from there on.
Yeah, and just gameplay wise it's very special as well, so.
Oh yeah. It's definitely it's definitely well known for a reason. Definitely.
And it is not the art.
No.
Next game, Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a character that I love and adore, and the music is Attitude.
Yeah.
But you already named Sonic, I think 2 or 3 times during this time in the podcast.
Yeah,
so.
Sonic Adventure 2 for sure.
Escape.
That was a soundtrack that I fell in love with.
No. Yes.
What's that?
Escape the City? Yes, no?
Oh, yes. Definitely. All the time.
That's definitely my favorite right off. I just love that track.
I love that soundtrack so much that this is past the statute of limitations, I'm sure, to admit this, but I downloaded it on LimeWire, which was one of those old streaming or old torrent services or whatever. It wasn't even torrent. I forget what it is.
It's just download. Yeah.
Yeah. So I downloaded the full soundtrack and then put it on a CD, and I drive around and drive my friends crazy with it. Like I had one friend who hated it. He's like, "Why are you always playing the soundtrack?" I'm like, "Because it's amazing."
Yeah.
And so that's probably that is a good way of saying, yeah, this is when it became more than just a video game soundtrack. It was music that I listened to in the car. I loved it, and there was a lot of the reasons I love that soundtrack is because there's such a variety, right? Which translates to GameGrooves. You had everything from rap / hip hop to metal to rock to, electronic with drum and bass.
Definitely.
Jazz. Every character had their own genre or theme.
Yeah, it's kind of persona to say the least, considering how they look and what kind of track they got.
Yeah. So I love still love that game, jank and all. And then from there on, you know, I got more into the Sonic the library of Sonic games and Sonic tracks. But Sonic Adventure 2 is definitely one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, which is why we ended up doing 2 albums for that soundtrack. Yeah.
It was not your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people to know a little bit more about these two, this is a villain's tribute to Sonic Adventure 2 and then a hero's tribute to Sonic
Correct.
Adventure 2. But one says live and one says learn. What's the difference there? How come you had those?
Live and learn.
Live
just
and
like
learn.
the Live and Learn, the famous track.
And now I spoiled it all by saying live.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. But I was just trying to be clever. I'm like, if we do Live and Learn, it's 2 albums, and then it's like, yeah, it's a thing. And actually, Live and Learn appears on both albums too. There's a version for Hero and there's a version for Villain.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I really adore that you did that kind of take, and especially just looking at it on Bandcamp, it looks so nice when Sonic and Shadow are standing next to each other. I thought it was Shadow. I looked and then I was like, I took it down and then I was like, oh wait, maybe it was. No, it wasn't. No, but I even have Sonic tattooed on my body as well, so I'm a sucker. But I'm more a sucker for the cartoons and the music rather than playing the games, because in my opinion the games are most of the time horrible, because I just run into walls and spikes every time.
Yeah. I think you have to love some of the janky designs, and like the transition from 2D to 3D was not easy for Sonic, I think, in a lot of ways.
Not. But anyway, I think I adore Sonic a little bit more from the 3D perspective, though. But to some extent, it's not a good fit for me either. But I definitely can just listen to the music and enjoy him from that part. And for me, he will always live through the cartoons with Sonic the Hedgehog, Sat-Am, and also Sonic X that I freaking adored. Yeah. And the last association we have before we listen to the next track, The Last of Us. I'm taking the tone down a little bit here.
Yeah, let's go from Sonic to like depressing post-apocalyptic. We're talking to the soundtrack.
Associations, thoughts on game or soundtrack.
I love them all. Okay, so full disclosure, the first time I played through the game, I enjoyed it. I did think it was a bit overrated because I kind of rushed through it. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I'm really bad at horror games. I get very easily frightened for some reason playing horror games. So I wasn't really trying to explore everything in the world. And then just recently, my brother-in-law bought me the PS5 remake for Christmas. And so once the show came out, I was like, you know what? I want to replay through this game. And I did it on hard. I played through on hard, and that forced me to really scavenge everything I could. And it changed it. And I love the game now because now I feel like on hard, it forced me to like really use every mechanic to my advantage. Whether that's cover or crafting things or funneling zombies or funneling infected into like corridors. I mean, just all the human fights are so much harder than the infected, I feel like. But the music is really. I want to give credit where credit's due. I feel like The Last of Us managed to do a AAA soundtrack that isn't the norm. They didn't go the typical route of doing like a big orchestral main theme, right? To make it sound as
they did more, less is more.
Yeah, with the guitar intro, like if you hear that like opening chord, like it strikes a chord, no pun intended, in the listener. And I think it perfectly encapsulates what the game's about, which is just this struggle to survive with these two characters. And yeah, I'm big fan of it now, even more than when it came out. And I've gotta beat part 2, obviously before the next season comes out. But I'm ready now. I got.
But you did play the DLC as well, I guess. Then from the
Last of Us. Yes, I did play the DLC for I forget what is Left Behind. I played that as well. But the music is really special, and I tip my hat to them because I think Um, it was an unexpected choice, but it was a good one.
I think from my perspective, from game developer perspective, and me analyzing a lot of things when it comes to design and so on, what they did good when it comes to The Last of Us is basically trying to get some music that is not in contrast, but it still complements the experience. You have something that is more down on the low. You have these emotional sounds happening rather than having something like rock popping up just because you get into a battle and so on that you can hear in other games.
Right.
So I think when it comes to that part, I think it really helps the experience because it increases how you feel about the different things happening on screen and what you should be experiencing in a freaking apocalypse where mushroom monsters are running around or spore monsters. So considering this with everything happening on screen, etc., there's a lot of things that just works together. Sometimes you either will have something to complement or something you will have a contrast to it. For a great example is, for example, the Diablo 3. You have a really slow-paced album, but the frequency of what you're doing in the game is very high-paced, so you're slaughtering all these demons and so on, but the music does not transcend slaughtering at all. So it becomes something that pulls you back from the experience rather than something to put you into the experience of being high pursuit or high adrenaline rush. So I like it in that sense very much. But that was basically the games we were going to talk about this. So I think it's time for the next song. This is track number 4. And this is the artist Vector U, and the theme is Theme of Love and Peace. And this is Summers, a lo-fi tribute to Earthbound. The Theme of Love and Peace by Vector U. And this was from the Summers, a lo-fi tribute to Earthbound album. I really, like we were talking a little bit about when we listened to this, lo-fi is a really exploding genre right now. There's a lot of different albums and a lot of people making remixes of even popular mainstream songs to lo-fi today.
Yeah, I jokingly said.
Was this like a statement too, in that sense?
I don't know. I think this was actually an album that I had been wanting to do for a while. And we had to delay it like a year for one reason or another. I just know, like you said, lo-fi has obviously become pretty popular, especially in the VGM cover scene.
Yes.
And I think it's maybe popular for a couple of reasons. One, it's not as intimidating as like doing a metal cover or something that requires a lot more complexity, right? But by the same token, it's I think it's deceivingly hard to make a good lo-fi track because you're stripping down a lot of things, right?
Yes.
So you're not doing like, big in your face beats. You're doing, smaller sounds. And I think when you do that, when you have less complex music, let's say, or less complexity, what you do really matters. So you can't have anything that's wasted. You've got to have like a good balance of everything. So yeah, I think a lot of I jokingly said like everybody has a lo-fi project these days, but it's true that there's a lot of artists. For instance, with this track, Vector U is primarily known for his electronic dance music covers and electronic covers. He's definitely more known for the high energy stuff. But obviously with this track, he took it down a notch, and it's a wonderful, atmospheric piece. You look at something else like the next track on the album, Free at Last, is by somebody, Katie Scary, and she's primarily a metal artist. You have Studio Nintendo, who's more known for rock. Seiya Sounds and Lucas Gamaris, aka Third Koopa, again, they're mainly known for other genres, and Rusty Powers is very much a metal artist most of the time, but did a great job with Theme of Gummy Village. So I don't know, it's like lo-fi is like it's like a way for, I guess it's like the way that musicians like to relax. Yeah, it's like a fun, I guess it's just fun and approachable, and that's why so many people like to try it. But like I said, I don't think it's easier. I don't think it's in any way less.
If something, it might even be harder, because now you're boiling everything down to what's the core of the song itself, basically, with lo-fi. Right. So I think compositionally, it is really hard to achieve a good lo-fi. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you're paring it down, and so if you don't do it well, it can get repetitive or monotonous, because you're distilling it down to its core components. So you have to come up with different either arrangements or different little textures, sonic textures to add to it to make it fun and exciting. But yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying, is it's kind of like the fun side project that a lot of people seem to have, or even main project, I guess, for a lot of artists.
Because from my perspective and from my understanding about lo-fi as well, I think the biggest rise on why they're becoming so popular nowadays is mainly due to stress. A lot of people are getting stressful about situations happening in the world. People are getting stressed about their daily lives, work, etc. There's so many things going on. We need to be connected all the time and approachable to some extent, that people are just out of their mind with being busy all the time. And I think lo-fi is just a way for either for us to getting to a good focus, or actually try to wind down in this world. And this is the reason why I think lo-fi is so suited, and why it's becoming more approachable, but also more popular as a genre. Yeah. Is this something you agree on, or?
No, I agree. And I think it's kind of like this playlist, songs to study to. It's something that you can put on in the background, and it's still engaging, but it doesn't demand your attention. It's not
exactly. You're not going to stand up and rock on.
Right, and it's not something where you're like trying to. It doesn't require you to like be super active listening. Like, I don't know, Complextro black metal or something like that. Where you're like, I don't know what I'm listening to.
And on the topic of thinking about lo-fi and everything, we got some more interesting associations for this round. Sure. Let's see how well you can concentrate to the first one. Mega Man 2.
Isn't that what Dr. Wily's theme was from? That's my association. Yeah. Oh my god, that's one of those tracks that's been, I don't want to say done to death, but it's definitely one of the most popular tracks in video game music history.
So considering, which one do you think people are most tired of? Dr. Wily's theme, or Wily's Castle, or Sephiroth?
You mean One Winged Angel?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dr. Wily's theme, because One Winged Angel, I don't know. It
feels
gonna say
like a
Dr.
cult
Wily.
classic with One Winged Angel, but
Yeah.
I find it hard as well trying to pick. For me personally, I think One Winged Angel, but I think I'm biased to this because I love the Mega Man music so much.
Yeah. No,
So-
Mega Man is another one of the soundtracks we need to visit someday.
But at the same time, considering there are some tracks in Mega Man series that are more, let's say, not as hectic as the Mega Man series might be. You have a platformer, there's just filled with adrenaline, a lot of things happening, even with the music. But thinking about tracks like the Bubble Man and tracks like that has like they have some sort of tempo to them, but the tracks kind of don't change if you drag it down a couple of BPMs. I've seen multiple remixes from the OC Remix community doing this with a lot of the Nintendo 8-bit tracks from Mega Man series.
Right.
So I think it still kind of fits as a association to the lo-fi here in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll allow it.
Yeah, I won't argue. But do you have any experience yourself with the Mega Man series? Have you played? games, or-
Just bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever. Maybe I beat Mega
They're
Man.
hard games. Holy crap.
2. Yeah, I know I've played them a couple times, but I don't think I've ever beaten any one of them.
I'm a sucker for the
I
Super
just know the
Nintendo, the Mega Man
soundtracks.
X series, and I've completed all 3 of them there.
Right.
But I'm a sucker for that one. Next game, Chrono Trigger. This is a special one in my opinion, because just like Mega Man 2, the soundtrack here is very well versed in my opinion, especially in remixes and covers.
Yes, and we did a Chrono Cross album, Divergent Waves, that was really enjoyable. But I know that someday we'll have to do a Chrono Trigger album. It's just, again, it's like knowing that there's so many communities that have already made albums and artists that have made albums. It's like, how do we make something that stands out a bit?
Yeah.
So I love it. I mean, another game that I've never played, but I know the soundtrack just because of covers, and I mean, there's so many wonderful songs on that soundtrack that.
Oh, the game is amazing.
Is it Magus that's like the Magus theme that's like a battle theme? That's one of my favorites. It's just great composition, you know.
Yeah.
Like and that kind of brings me to a different point that I haven't mentioned yet, which is, can video game music stand on its own? Like, does it have to be listened to in the context of playing the game in order to fully appreciate all of it? I don't think it has to. I think it can help. But I think that a great video game soundtrack can stand on its own. Meaning, like, I've never played Chrono Trigger, but I have definitely formed emotional attachments to all the music because of the songs that I've heard, because they're just so well composed, and I can already have some preconceptions of what those characters or those events or those worlds might look like.
Yeah.
And that to me is the power of video game music, is that it has it invokes certain emotions and certain feelings. You know.
I agree to some extent. For me, I'm coming into this from another aspect, and the aspect I'm coming through is when it comes to video game music, in comparison to what we talked prior to this with series and movies. Video game music has already from the beginning a certain aspect of interaction.
Sure.
And when you're making a movie, you're making the sound to sound in a specific way because you already know what will happen on the screen. So when you're listening to a music tune, it's like, oh yeah, in 1 minute you will have the big crescendo and then da 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 da. But with video games, you could have the crescendo, but you cannot experience the crescendo because you might have another experience there. So they're kind of built up in another way to a certain extent. But as I said, I still agree with you. It's just I'm coming from another perspective on it.
Yeah, and I think that deals more with the need, especially for older games where you have looped soundtracks, where it has to be something that you don't grow tired of, and it can have natural rises and falls, but it can't be. It can't be cinematic in that sense. Like you said, you don't know exactly what's going to happen unless it's like a cutscene. But for levels and things like that, I mean, you can even look at a more recent game like Celeste, for the same thing, where you have these tracks that are really iconic. They're loopable, but I'm gonna forget Resurrections. I remember playing through that level when Resurrections. I think it's like track 3 is playing, and then you have that moment where the music changes because of a gameplay moment, and that's special and that's unique to video games for sure.
Yes.
But again, it has to serve another purpose beyond just being interesting to listen to, and that is informing the player of what's going on.
Yeah. The music today will be more dynamic than ever as well, because now we're starting to get more dynamic parts to the music itself. So today we might, instead of having just one track that is played over and over again, you will have layers of a track being played.
Right.
And depending on where you are in the game, how much enemies are present and so on, the music will adapt. And I think we only still scratched on the surface of what video game music is. One of the best examples considering layering on music, especially from when we started looking into the aspects of having more dynamic build-ups of this, would be from the game Luftrausers by Digital Devolver. Because in that game, depending on how you crafted or how you did your ship in order to go out and fight, depending on which parts you choose, that became your track. So every time you play the game and just have a random aircraft every turn, your music will change, but it will still have the kind of same vibe to it all the time. It just will have all these different layers that will make your track unique. So in total, I think you have like 150 tracks or something like that, but it's all because of this layering, and it's just crazy.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of this game, but it sounds very cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to check it out.
I think the album, you have like 30 or 40 tracks or something like that. You get a lot of tracks. But it's just the interesting part. And then, considering more lo-fi tracks, Zelda is something we've seen so many times right now on the lo-fi top lists.
Yes.
I guess you have a lot of experience with Zelda as well, of course, with Ocarina of Time mainly, and Wind Waker.
Yeah.
Do they feel like a lo-fi vibe? And if yes, which game would you deem would be the best lo-fi game?
Twilight Princess, easily. Twilight Princess has a very, like, melancholy sound to most of its soundtrack, I feel like, especially like Minda's Lament. That's one of my favorite tracks in video game history. It's just a very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm just thinking when it comes to Twilight Princess, as you said, it's melancholic. But for me, if it goes lo-fi, I get the feeling it might lose out a little bit too much.
Okay.
But that is just what I'm thinking about it. To me, when I'm thinking lo-fi, I'm almost thinking more Wind Waker, personally.
Yeah, I think it could be interesting. Something like Dragon Root Island, or you have these like very lively tracks to see them like a little bit slowed down and stripped apart would be interesting.
Because I think when it comes to lo-fi, you have this kind of flow in the music that kind of gives, I would say, the element of wind. For some reason, for me, it feels like an element of wind, and that's why I think it fits for Wind Waker a little bit more to me. Because when I played Twilight Princess, you had this melancholic feeling, and it's one of the, in my opinion, one of the darker Zelda games. Of course, Majora's Mask is also a dark game,
right?
But considering what is happening in Twilight Princess, it feels like a very dark world.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I see what you're saying with Wind Waker. I think that would be another good fit. Of course, I mean, there's probably already a couple people that have done this in the past. We'd have to just go find
Most likely. We have some people sitting in a basement and doing the most amazing tracks we've never heard of. Sadly, we'll see. But yeah, I think it is time for us to grab and listen to the last track of this week. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Because holy crap, we're turning this up to to like 300% this time. This is is it Third Decay or?
Yes, Ferd K.
Yeah,
is the artist.
Third K. This is the track Out of Time, and this is from the album. Holy crap! This is Latin, right? Encuentro
Encuentro de Sangre.
de Sangre, a metal tribute to Castlevania. We're out of time because this was the last song of the track or the episode.
Good segue.
But this is for Decay, and this was Encuentro de Sangre, a metal tribute to Castlevania. Don't you feel like you're a little bit like last on the ball, or how does it feel releasing a metal tribute to Castlevania?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say I'm late to the party necessarily, but so this album was a little different from our typical albums, where I wanted to highlight a specific part of the VGM community, and I really admired a lot of the Latin American and South American metal artists, like Ferd K and Poker's Project, and artists like that. And Thenikin, obviously, and Mauricio Plasma. So I reached out to Thenikin and said, I'm interested in doing this album. I want to pick out a few artists from that community. Could you help me? And so he contacted a few people, and there's four primary artists that arranged the whole album. And then they all played on each other's tracks as well. We had a dedicated bassist and drummer and a dedicated keyboardist. So it's one of the most cohesive, like, whole sounding albums we have, because one person mixed and mastered everything, and all these artists provided
really
live
cool
instruments.
So in that sense, it's from a production perspective, it is a quite unique album that you worked on.
Yes, it's the first one of its kind where we had a dedicated mixer and master.
And how well did that work from production perspective? Did it help a lot, or was it a good kind of what is it called when you complement each other from perspective?
It was a different kind of challenge, because normally artists submit semi-mastered tracks, right? It's unmastered, but they're fully mixed. With this album, it was really up to Thenikin. I couldn't have done it without him, because he talked with all the artists, got all the stems and raw music, and then delivered them to James C. Hoffman, who does all of our mastering for GameGrooves. And James did such a phenomenal job making it just sound, like I said, there's always something that we're looking to do. So obviously Castlevania metal album is not an original idea, but my idea was to elevate it to the next level by having a smaller group of arrangers and then dedicated musicians that played on every track. So I think that I'm very happy with how it turned out.
I gotta say, when I was listening through this, holy crap, the like the tempo and the amount of things happening was overloading my systems, to be honest.
Yeah,
I really adored them. It was so good. Some of them were almost like too good, blew my mind almost. But one thing that I find interesting as well, so considering we have a metal tribute to Castlevania, there's a lot of Castlevania tracks out there. But considering and looking through all the tracks that we have here, we're only having tracks from the Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 here. Was this also like a limitation you purposely did?
Yes, yeah, we wanted to keep it focused on the first 3. Because obviously there's so many great soundtracks to choose from Castlevania.
And that is interesting. And also, of course, there are some, like Wicked Child, you have the Vampire Killer. These are tracks that we also are able to hear in other games, of course, because these are like the super classics. But what I find very interesting as well is I find some of these tracks that I haven't really heard of. I was a little bit unsure, like, oh, where are these? Like, why is on game? I've never heard about it. For example, track 6 with Demon Seed, for example. I was like, where the hell is this played? So I find it really interesting that we're also previous to some of the tracks that are not that common in remix or people talking about all the time. And this is something that I find very interesting from my perspective as well, because when I'm selecting tracks for the podcast, I usually try to avoid the most obvious tracks because every other podcast is playing them.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Is this also something that is interesting from your part when you're actually composing and putting together an album and people doing submissions? Are you trying to pick a more like well-versed album, or are you trying to have more, people know these tracks? Because I know they will kind of work to some extent.
I don't really set any guidelines on what tracks I'm looking for based on like the popularity of it or how often it's been covered, except for one exception. I will say, you may notice there's no Bloody Tears on this album, and that was because all 4 artists have already made arrangements, and they're like, we don't want to do Bloody Tears. And I was like, okay. I actually was like, are we sure we don't want to? And everyone's like, yeah, we don't want to. I was like, okay, fine. I wasn't going to push it because eventually we just put out our kind of April Fool's album, VGM is Not a Genre. I mentioned that before. And we have Bleeding Tears, which is Bloody Tears plus Bleed from Meshuggah. And with that album, for VGM is Not a Genre, which is our like April Fool's album, I said to all the artists, I want all the tracks that have been covered to death. Like, I want the tracks that everybody's heard 1,000 times, and we're going to make them gent. And that's what's going to be like the special twist.
I would have loved to see like an album released on the 1st of April, kind of like you're saying, play to death, but you're putting them in a situation where nobody have ever heard them. Like, let's say you're doing Bloody Tears in a pan flute version.
Oh, yeah, like very out there version.
Yeah, you would be like, what the hell am I listening to? But I love it. I don't know why.
Yeah, like an all Scottish bagpipes album. Like, that would be something. That would be something. I don't know if it would be good, but it would be something.
People will talk about it for a reason, and maybe it's not the good reason.
Yeah.
So, in consideration to all the different albums we talked about, I know you said that you're really fond of the Scario Kart album, but considering all the albums you released, which one was the most challenging one to work on of the released ones?
That's a good question. Oh,
I'm good at those good questions.
Discography. I mean, challenging. There's probably a couple different answers because the challenges there's like different kinds of challenges. There are albums that took longer than others. There's albums where there's just a lot of things that kind of.
But maybe you have some specific challenge that you had and that you remember. It's like, I will hopefully never do this this thing again because it was so problematic, or maybe it had a chance to kind of make at some point either it would delay the album a lot, or it would be like, oh, this almost canceled the full album.
Yeah, I would say I'm gonna say that. Sorry, I'm just thinking for a second. Cut this.
No worries. No worries.
All right. I'll give my example.
Yes.
So this is an album that I'm pretty fond of, but it was challenging because I had to realize like this isn't the direction for GameGrooves, and that was our tribute to Joey Jordison, which is like a Slipknot album. I am was a huge Slipknot fan, especially their first two albums. Joey Jordison passed away in 2021, and I thought I wanted to do a tribute album to pay tribute to him, but I had plans to put out several other albums in this similar vein, where it's GameGrooves artists, like GameGrooves goes pop punk, or GameGrooves goes this. Like, you remember those albums, like pop punk goes pop, or metal goes this, or you know what I mean? Like this idea of blending genres, which I eventually kind of did anyways with like Blink-182 and whatnot. But this album is still one of our worst performing albums, and when we put it out there, I think it wasn't, no one was expecting it, and not in a good way, because like I said, you GameGrooves, I had to learn when a personal project was what a personal project versus a passion project, right?
Yeah.
Like Live and Learn were passion projects, but they both fit for GameGrooves. Something like this, like if I could go back in time, not to say that I don't like the tracks that we did, and I'm proud of all of them, but I would just go back in time and be like, I don't think we really should do this because this doesn't fit GameGrooves. Like if it's GameGrooves, it has to have some relation to video games.
Yeah.
And so after this album, all those plans to do, more popular types of music, but with GameGrooves artists, kind of I put them to bed essentially, because I was like, this isn't going to work. Obviously it didn't pan out. And so that was hard, because it was an important lesson to learn.
Yes.
That I need to focus what I wanted to do with GameGrooves. So that,
but in the end, hopefully it made something better as well, because then you're seeing the limits, and you know where to draw the line, basically, and that will help you in the future, hopefully, making decisions.
So something like, I could see perhaps something like a Star Wars tribute album, because Star Wars music has appeared multiple times in video games.
Yes,
and there's definitely crossover, but obviously, like, just what I would consider non-VGM music, like I don't know, non-video game music is probably not going to be something I pursue with GameGrooves. If I do something, it'll be a different project. But yeah, there's my answer. And again, it's not because the production was hard. It's because I had to learn the hard lesson, which is making sure that the brand or whatever, the focus of GameGrooves stays on video game music.
I think it's an excellent answer, and the best honest one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to say, like, which album was really difficult.
Everything.
Yeah, everyone.
They all comes with bits and pieces and problems. It's like having children.
Exactly. Speak from experience.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was my final question, considering the albums and a little bit more about GameGrooves. So let's do some last minutes associations here before we're closing this up. So the first one out on the last three here is Final Fantasy VII. I know a lot of people love and adore this soundtrack, and it's also a lot of people that has Final Fantasy VII as one of their favorite Final Fantasy games. Where do you stand in this?
It's great. This is a good segue for me, because our next album that comes out on, I don't know, probably by the time this comes out, Friday, April 21st, we have a new album called Limit Breaker, a ska tribute to Final Fantasy VII. We have 5 tracks up for preview right now, so the full album will probably be out at the time of this releases, but another one of those games, I've played a little bit of it, but I'm mostly familiar with the soundtrack through covers, and I think that there's a reason why it's one of the most iconic soundtracks of all time. So I love it, and getting to hear ska renditions of all these tracks that I knew and loved was super fun. A lot of fun.
I gotta say that the cover for this is just chef's kiss. It's the classic pose when Cloud is standing, usually with his Buster Sword on his back, looking up. Yep. Yeah, I think it's Midgar, right? There's looking up. Yeah. But in this case, the Buster Sword is a trumpet, or the long. I don't
Trombone,
remember. Trombone. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not so used to instrument names. For me, trumpet's everything.
Yeah.
But the trombone, and it's just amazing art-wise, in my opinion.
We wanted artwork that closely resembled the game artwork, and that was I don't remember who came up with it. It might have been me. I was like, what if we did a trombone instead of a Buster Sword? And then it just worked. And I think it's like that's such an iconic game cover that like as soon as people see that, they immediately think, oh, Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I agree. So considering the game as well, are you well versed with it, or are you more like me?
I've played a little bit of the original and a little bit of the remake. And I need to go through and play the original first, and then the remake at some point.
Why do you believe that you need to play both?
Well, I've heard that there's things about the remake where you have to play the original game to fully understand what's going on. Yeah.
That is interesting. Now, for me, I haven't played the remake. I played about 2 CDs on the original. I do own the original, but I haven't really took the time to play a lot of it. For me, I love Final Fantasy VIII more than the 7.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know why. I just like the 8 more.
It's fine. I know a lot of people that are the same way.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you say you love the 8th game, you get so much shit on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
It is crazy. They're like, why do you like the emo kid Squall? He's just the worst kind of protagonist ever. I was like, I don't know, I like him. And the gun swords are cool. So it's just hilarious in my opinion. But for some reason, I resonated the most with it. We're not gonna get the remake. We got a HD remaster instead, and I guess we're happy with that. But considering rock as well, I mean, a lot of people have done rock remixes on the Final Fantasy music. I think they have been done to death. Considering from my part, Final Fantasy, I think I've done more original music rather than the remixes in this part. But remix-wise, it's the One-Winged Angel like most of the times.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of the same for you, or?
Yeah, I would say so for sure.
But another game, I think you listen to more to the original than any remix. Doom.
Ah, yes.
Because holy crap, that.
Wait, which one? The new Doom or the original Doom?
I would say both are pretty rocky, but instead, let's talk about the new one from 2016.
Yeah.
Because holy crap, we're back at some really good composers here, and it is quite unique what he did, Mick Gordon, with Doom. But considering also what happened to him with Doom Eternal, it's kind of sad.
I'm still mad about it. Yeah, I'm still mad about it because, I mean, I know we're not getting the full story, but
of course, it is a one-sided. But listening to the other side.
Mick Gordon is so integral to the Doom soundtrack at this point that it's like, I don't know how they're going to replace him. Like, whoever steps in, if they do a third Doom game, whoever steps in to do that is going to have huge shoes to fill.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you were talking about like Diablo 3, how the music doesn't really reflect the gameplay, whereas I feel like Doom, it's just exactly what you want for that. It's like in your face. I mean, I call it like when the first game came out, I was like, this is the best Slipknot album in years. Like, there's some tracks that are just great. Like, if Slipknot continued doing what they did with like Iowa, that's what it would sound like. And he has this incredible blend of electronic and metal, and it's seamless. Like, that's the thing. This is me on another little rabbit hole, but I feel like a lot of times with industrial metal, where you incorporate electronic elements, they never mesh. You just have metal guitars, either like they kind of dumb down the riffs so they can add electronic elements.
Yeah.
Or you just have metal and then you have electronic, and then you have metal and then you like, they go back and forth. They never blend them together. But with Doom, it blended so perfectly that it's like you don't know what you're listening to. It sounds like some kind of
it fades in very seamlessly to each other.
Yeah. So that soundtrack is probably one of the most intense soundtracks in gaming history.
Definitely.
And I think it's a perfect
I actually have no
soundtrack.
Yeah, I have no suggestion of any other soundtrack that kind of competes with it, to be honest. Maybe Quake is the closest.
Yeah. But no, I mean, as far as extreme music goes, that's like the bar has been set that high.
Yes, definitely. When I listen to Doom Eternal, the sequel to Doom from 2016, I mean, just listening to the behind the scenes and knowing that, holy crap, he actually took in a full metal singer choir to sing in the soundtrack. Freaking insane. Yeah. Who would think about that?
Yeah.
So I just adore what they're doing and trying to do something unique and specific about something new when it comes to an original. He's not making covers. He's not making any remasters or something like that. He's making unique original content, and it's just insane.
Yeah.
It seems new, but for some reason, if somebody would come up to me and say like, "Hey, we're going to make Doom and we're going to have a metal choir," I was like, haven't they already done that? If they haven't done Eternal before, because it feels so perfectly suited to some extent.
Yeah, natural.
Yeah,
natural.
Definitely. Next game. This is gonna be like not a tongue twister per se, but it's gonna be a little twist. But I know a lot of people have done remixes on this one as well. Not a lot of tracks, but we all know it. Tetris.
Okay, yeah.
So, what do you think about Tetris? What's your experience with that one?
That's a funny
I know one track, basically.
I think we all know the one track, and I think it's like a Russian folk song or something like that. Like that the, I guess, I don't actually know if the developer was also the composer, but there's like side A or Tetris Part A and Tetris Part B, and the Part B I think is original, but Part A is like adapted Russian folk song. Another one of those like infamous gaming songs that like it's catchy and it sticks in your head and it loops, and it's like a perfect example of like I said, with video game music, it isn't just about making songs that are enjoyable or well composed. It's about making songs that can loop without driving people crazy. Because I mean, if it demands too much of your attention, like if you're listening to something like, I don't know, Beethoven's Fifth for the 100th time, you probably lose your mind. So there is an art, I feel like, in arranging and composing music that is meant to be repeated over and over. And I think that the Tetris soundtrack definitely achieved that. Same thing with Super Mario Brothers in the first one, where you're doing that. Yeah.
But one thing that I find interesting as well when it comes to the Tetris, especially the classic one that everybody knows, it has been remixed in so many different versions, and there's actually also a reason why I put Tetris as the last song to discuss a little bit. But I will come to that as well. But one of the first remixes I've heard about Tetris is the classic like dance floor edition. It's like everybody get out, this club is closed forever, and then dun, 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 and then a lot of bass is kicking in and everybody's just dancing, jumping, having a good time. I think you might know of it as well. I might have heard it at some point. And then you have like a rock version of it, and then you most likely have some other, like, it feels like I've heard like every genre of that Tetris song. And I don't know if you agree to this, or do you feel like it feels like, oh no, people are making more rock versions of this song or not?
I guess I kind of agree. I can see both sides.
Yeah. But considering that, so the reason why I kind of put Tetris here, talking about different styles, it's usually, would you ever consider making like an album with only one song, but you do it in different styles? Because one thing we see today in some music videos and so on is people doing animation, but they're adding a lot of different animations while having that song on. It's like, hey, this is the latest Super Mario song from Shulk Eaters, and we're doing it in 23 different styles.
Yeah. Let me think. I have like thought about it in terms of like April Fool's stuff, or maybe just as a way to like show how versatile the cover community can be. Or maybe we can't really do medleys legally speaking anymore, but you can do like suites, so you have one track, one arrangement, and then another arrangement, and then another arrangement. So no, I think that's something that's definitely a possibility at some point. Just have to be the right track.
Of course. It's gonna be Tetris.
Yeah, Tetris.
Tetris. You heard it here first, folks. April next year.
Yeah, April 1st next year. It's going to be a Tetris album. All Tetris.
Only Tetris. The first track will be, hey, why are you listening to this? You will go crazy. And then it starts.
Yeah.
And see how many people got crazy listening to this track. No, but it's fun to hear. It was really fun having you to join in on this podcast to talk a little bit about the work you do, how the process kind of work a little bit, and what you actually do when it comes to this. It was super fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Getting to know you a little bit more, but also getting to know your work a little bit more. For me, I'm just starting dipping my toes into what GameGrooves is, and I will definitely follow up on this and see where you're going with this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
So yeah, on top of that, as we're starting to close up everything here, is there any way if people want to reach out to you to either kind of want to join in on what you're doing, or maybe just want to, hey, what's the first thing I need to know about publishing? How can they reach out to you?
So we probably, I wouldn't say the easiest way, but maybe the most, I guess it is the easiest way, is either Twitter or if you use Facebook, like some of us still do, easy, but you can use it. Also, you can email me at gamegrooves87@gmail.com. That would probably be the easiest ways to get a hold of me. It's either Twitter, Facebook, or email. Or Discord. We do have a public GameGrooves Discord.
That's awesome. So you have a small community there as well to just talk about covers and remixes and so on. Or what's usually the buzz there?
Everything going on in the video game music community. A lot of licensing questions you can definitely get answered there. There's a lot of really knowledgeable people that are there, so that's good.
That's awesome. Considering what you're up to, is there anything you want to promote? We have the Limited Breaker album that you had with a Scott tribute to Final Fantasy VII. That will be released when we release this episode. If this was released on the 21st.
Yeah, so that'll be the thing that I would say everybody could go check out. Also, I'm excited to announce we are doing physicals for the first time.
Ooh,
we're gonna have CDs and cassettes for that album. So we haven't manufactured them yet. We're gonna take orders and then we're going to start shipping them out.
So you're gonna do it kind of on demand them.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, we'll probably put up like 100 copies on Bandcamp and then just up it if we need to. But our intent is to sell it through Bandcamp and go from there.
Would there be a possibility to have them signed as well, for example? Or is that too much problem if people are living too far away, etc.?
The only problem with that is I'm not actually handling the CDs. I have a partner, Punk International. They're a ska label, an indie ska label. They're handling all the manufacturing of it. So if you want their signature, sure. I guess you could technically ship it to me, but yeah. If you want me to sign something, I guess I could. Just come to MagFest next year, and then I'll sign it.
I would love to go to a MagFest or like VGN Con that I heard of that was this weekend. I was like, oh god damn, why do I live in Sweden?
Yeah, we need a European MagFest for sure.
Definitely. No, I've been hearing about MagFest and PAX East and all those where people of video music just add up and have a good party. I was like, I want to be there. hang out with people that are amazing and love video game music as much as I do. So it doesn't matter what you listen to, people are gonna be vibing anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that was everything. Is there anything else you want to kind of do a shout out or anything?
Not really at the moment. I just appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast, and obviously I'm honored to be part of the VGM community and get to work with so many fun and creative people.
Yeah, but then with that said, other episodes of the Gameable audio, you can find those on our homepage at videospelsklubben.se, Spotify, or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow and comment on any of our social medias, either on Facebook or Instagram. Just search for Gameable audio. It helps a lot just staying informative, but also just chatting. I just love to talk to you guys who are listening. I want to hear some of your favorite covers, and maybe Alan here also want to know.
Yeah.
So he knows what to remix later.
Yeah. Get some ideas.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Also, you can support this podcast for future content and quality upgrades, but also in the end, we will support future composers. So think about becoming a Patreon. And the current awesome backers that we do have today is Daniel Onemark, Lars Schenström, Titti Schenström, Kevin Wikström, and Mike Björkholm. Thank you so much for being part and being such an amazing backers. Link to where you can either buy or support GameGrooves here, and also in the end, I guess, the composers behind the music. You will find those in the main post of videospelsklubben.se. Also, we will do some short posts, most likely with some of the things specifically we've been talking about, so we can handpick those things, and you will find them in our posts as well. And the theme for the next show, I know we've been talking a little bit about Mario, and of course it wasn't long ago since they released the Mario movie, so I kind of wanted to cover a little bit about Mario as well. So the next theme is going to be about the sideshow Mario, basically talking about all I'm going to talk about non-mainstream or main series of Mario games. Do you have any specific game not from the main series of Mario that you like, Alan?
Obviously the Mario Kart series, although those are pretty mainstream, I guess. Mario Party 1. Yeah.
Let's break friendship!
Exactly.
It's gonna be interesting looking into this. Of course, I know a little bit about like Mario Tennis, Mario Golf. You have the Mario Party series that really kind of sticks out from what is deemed to be a main series. But I'm actually interested in going into even further, like Mario Teaches, Mario's Hotel, just to see what the hell the music is up there. Because I've seen the games a little bit, I know of them, but I actually haven't looked into the soundtracks that much. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I guess I haven't delved too deep into the Mario universe of obscure games, right?
Is it something you would be interested in?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah? So maybe you'll tune in for the next episode then to see what the hell is up with the Mario games. But yeah, that is it for this week. This is going to be a long episode. I can see we've been recording here for almost 2 hours and 30 minutes. Yet again, Alan, thank you so much for joining in. It's been an honor having you here, and I hope a lot of people who are listening to this podcast will get their eyes open for GameGrooves as well. So with that said, I wish everybody to have a great weekend now, and yeah, see you all guys next time for the episode. So with that, do take care, everybody, and have a great time. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you for having me on the podcast. Take care.